Let's bring it back together. What were some things y'all talked about in your groups? You want to share with the rest of the group? What are some observations you had about the last 15 verses? Go for it.
I'm jumping down. So in verse 25, the woman said, I know that Messiah called Christ is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. And the way we kind of saw that was like, she was just waiting for him to come. And she was kind of being passive about it. Like, when he comes, I'll figure everything out. But I don't need to seek him or try and seek answers or whatever. Almost like when the Messiah comes, he would find her and not her having to find him.
Other thoughts? Yeah. Tell me your name.
Zach.
Zach. Awesome. Thanks, man.
In 21, Jesus declared, "Believe me, woman, the time is coming when you worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem." That just kind of struck us because in that time period, and it wasn't just their culture, it was all cultures, where you worship was every bit as important as who you worship. And for him to come out and say it doesn't matter that you're in Jerusalem or you're on the mountain to be able to worship was just radically different than anything he'd seen. And later in 23 he says, "Yet a time is coming and has now come when true worshipers worship in the Spirit, worship the Father in spirit and truth, for they are the kind of worshiper the Father seeks." And Christians today kind of get stuck in that mindset of we have to worship at church or at large group or small group or whatever we're doing. And but they don't really see the big picture that you worship wherever you are. It doesn't matter where you are.
That's a great thought, Zach. Yeah. So worship as a lifestyle instead of like this hour once a day or once a week, right? That what does it look like to practice the presence of Christ, right? Yeah. I love what you said earlier about in verse 21, what Jesus said that, and you were talking about like where they worship was important, right? So the Jews worshipped in Jerusalem. That's where worship was. And so you're a Samaritan. Let's pretend like you are a Samaritan woman in this time. You are treated as less than in so many ways, right? And so if this place is the place that God dwells and where you go to worship him and you are a Samaritan, you actually do not get to go in to worship. Like, they actually had a dividing wall that Samaritans, the Gentiles, couldn't cross. And so Samaritans are, in there too, right? And so then, in the past that, it was like women couldn't go past this, and then it was like only the high priest could go past that. And so Jesus is just saying something crazy here, because this woman, he's saying that she can worship God now anyway, right? I mean, that's bonkers. And I mean, this is just what Jesus is saying. He's really giving her. It's a sweet moment, this little nugget. But the mode of worship now is to be in spirit and truth, which transcends all racial and local considerations. So Samaritans will not be held at a distance anymore, but all can worship. And so this is hitting the Samaritan woman in a very deep way. This isn't just like a light conversation. It's like, that's cool, great, now we can all worship. This is deep. Yeah, go for it, Wyatt.
To go along with that, like about, everyone's kind of getting fair treatment. He tells her to go and get her husband and bring him back and everything. To her knowledge, this is still just a stranger. So she could have just like easily said, I got something else to do, I'll maybe next time. And she said, I don't have a husband. And he goes on and tells her that she's had 5 husbands and that. So it's kind of like he gave her the opportunity to come forward and say, I don't have a husband. Maybe if he just continued casual conversation further, he might tell the truth further or not. But it's just kind of like he opened the door for her. And it didn't matter that she was divorced 5 times or they died 5 times. The fact that she was married more than once was still kind of big, I suppose, back then. Yeah. So
go for it.
It didn't make any difference. Like she could have lied 5 times, she could have got divorced 5 times, even killed 5 times. It didn't matter to him, not one bit. And when we all have that fair ground, It's just, to him, it hurts him all the same, but he still forgives the same. We have this idea like one sin is greater than another. Maybe we're just designed that way. But, so it's just radical to us to think that someone could just forgive like that.
Yeah, share that, Wyatt. When does Jesus reveal that he is the Christ in this conversation?
Here again.
Well, the last thing. Bum, bum, bum. It's like a song. And I love the way he says it too. I who speak to you am he. It's like, oh man, it's so great. I love the way he does that. And like, it's just, he's kind of led her to this place. Okay, well, let's talk about some more observations in there, in the last 15 verses.
Just got one more.
Yeah, go for it. And we'll get you in the back.
The disciples, they came up and it says, but no one asked, what do you want, or why are you talking with her? I don't know if that was just like they were all thinking that, or if it's just like they're like, okay, Jesus has done stuff like this, like talked to children before, and we told the children back off, and he got mad. Maybe we should just be quiet.
Yeah. We're just imagine the disciples going around with Jesus in all these different situations. Like, you can just imagine them like, one case they're like, are you going to say something?
It's like one guy's like, okay, maybe you should, no.
Yeah.
Keep going, Jesus.
Yeah. So they were very aware that this was very different from what Jesus was doing. Yeah, go for it.
Well, on what he was saying, in my Bible, the version that I have, it says that the disciples didn't have the nerve to say so. They're like, okay, let him do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
We'll just, yes, okay.
Yeah, I read in the commentary that the disciples' reluctance to ask questions show how embarrassed they were at Jesus' actions, right? Kind of sounds a little different than the way it's read there. You know, you can kind of take it away, but, yeah.
And then I thought it was really interesting in verse 29 how she went back to the townspeople and was like, y'all come see this man. It kind of gives me an idea that she actually was starting to believe, because as we talked about in the verse, she was an outcast. She didn't do things with the rest of the group. So for her to go back to the whole town and tell them this bizarre, crazy, out of the mind thing was like really big.
Yes, so she was an outcast, and her interaction with Jesus propels her into community. Yeah. I mean, like, we are made for community. Like, there's something in us that we are not made to be by ourselves. We're made to be in community, right? The Trinity is community, right? I try to wrap my head around that, but I mean, right, we have an example in that. Like, there's community.
That was redeeming, because she didn't have community.
Yeah.
It's like, well, but now I have a reason to come to you. Like, I found Jesus, I found the Messiah. So it's like the perfect excuse. Not only did he like call her out, but in a good way. Then he formed a relationship with her, and then he gave her reason to form a relationship with others. I mean, he seriously knew her.
Yeah. Yeah, so what happens right before she goes back to talk everyone? There's an action that we haven't talked about yet that happens. She leaves her water jar bucket. Yes.
Bucket.
She didn't have a bucket. I appreciate it bringing it. Yes. She leaves her bucket behind. So she came to the well to get water with her water jar, right? And then she came and Jesus talked to her about what living water was. And then she leaves without her bucket. Because she has living water, right? Isn't that crazy that she leaves it behind and then goes? I just love that little details added in there, because it's not like left up for interpretation, like, I wonder if she left her bucket or not. She did. Yeah?
It was noon too, so it was hot.
Yeah.
Probably wanted to drink.
Yeah. It's like she missed her whole goal going out there. But, I mean, Jesus changed her whole world, right?
Yeah.
Good. So, these buckets, this bucket for her, this was her relationship with guys, right? Having 5 husbands before, not being married to this guy that she's with now. These were like her buckets. These things that were blockages that were kind of preventing her from fully following the Lord. So Jesus calls her out on that. He knows that this is an area that she needs to change in, and she responds. She leaves her bucket behind. So, yeah, I love after the husband part of the conversation that Jesus doesn't walk away. I feel like if I think about conversation